15 people sat in perfect silence at the library tables, their books open to random pages, their minds completely blank. They knew their names, they knew the date, but the previous 72 hours had been erased from their memories as if someone had reached into their minds and stolen 3 days of their lives. Margaret Foster had been the head librarian at Millbrook Public Library for 18 years. In all that time, she had never experienced anything more unusual than the occasional homeless person seeking shelter during harsh winters, or teenagers attempting to hide inappropriate magazines behind respectable literature. The grand old building, constructed in 1923, was a pillar of the small Connecticut community, serving a population of just over 12,000 residents with quiet dignity and unwavering routine. On Tuesday morning, October 15, 2008, Margaret arrived at the library at precisely 7:45 a.m., as was her custom. She parked her modest Honda Civic in the same spot she had used for nearly 2 decades, gathered her thermos of coffee and leather satchel, and approached the imposing stone facade of the building. The autumn air was crisp, with the first hints of winter beginning to show in the bare branches of the oak trees that lined Library Avenue. Margaret inserted her key into the heavy oak doors and stepped inside, immediately noticing that something was different. The usual musty smell of old books was tinged with something else, a clinical, antiseptic odor that reminded her of hospitals. She flipped on the main lights, expecting to see the familiar sight of empty reading tables and neatly arranged chairs. Instead, she gasped. 15 people sat scattered throughout the main reading room, each positioned at a different table, all staring down at open books with the blank, unblinking expression of sleepwalkers. They were dressed in ordinary street clothes. Business suits, casual wear, an elderly woman in a floral dress, a young man in a college sweatshirt. Their ages ranged from early 20s to late 70s, and they represented a cross-section of Millbrook's population. "Excuse me," Margaret called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "The library doesn't open until 9 o'clock. None of the 15 people responded. They continued to stare at their books, turning pages occasionally with mechanical precision, as if following some invisible script. Margaret approached the nearest patron, a middle-aged woman in a navy business suit, who was seated at table 3, her eyes fixed on a volume about Renaissance art. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The woman looked up slowly, her eyes focusing on Margaret with obvious effort. Yes, I think so." Her voice was uncertain, confused. "I'm sorry, what time is it?" "It's 8 o'clock in the morning," Margaret replied, studying the woman's pale complexion and dilated pupils. "How did you get in here?" "The library was locked." The woman blinked several times, as if trying to clear her vision. I'm not sure. She paused, her forehead creasing with concentration. "I remember coming here Friday evening to return some books, but then," she trailed off, looking genuinely bewildered. Margaret moved to the next table, where a young man in his 20s sat reading a technical manual about electrical engineering. When she asked him the same questions, his response was virtually identical: confusion about the time, uncertainty about how he had entered the building, and a complete inability to recall anything that had happened since Friday evening. As Margaret made her way through the reading room, questioning each of the 15 patrons, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every single person claimed to have last remembered being at the library on Friday, October 10th, around closing time. None of them could explain how they had entered the locked building, why they were there on a Tuesday morning, or what had happened during the intervening 72 hours. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a psychology professor at the local community college, sat at table 7 with a book about ancient Mesopotamian civilizations open before her. She was one of the more articulate patrons, and her academic background made her observations particularly unsettling. "This is highly unusual," Dr. Rodriguez told Margaret, her voice steady despite the obvious concern in her eyes. "I have no memory of checking out this book, and ancient history isn't my field of study. I specialize in behavioral psychology." She gestured to the volume before her. "I would never have chosen this text voluntarily." Margaret noticed that Dr. Rodriguez's statement applied to many of the other patrons as well. The elderly woman in the floral dress was reading a complex physics textbook, despite identifying herself as a retired elementary school teacher. A construction worker sat absorbed in a volume of Victorian poetry, while a local accountant studied a manual on organic farming techniques. The books seemed to have been assigned randomly, with no connection to the reader's interests, education, or background. Margaret immediately called 911, explaining the bizarre situation to the dispatcher. Within 20 minutes, the library was filled with police officers, paramedics, and Detective Sarah Chen, who had been assigned to investigate what was being termed a possible break-in with unknown circumstances. Detective Chen was a 10-year veteran of the Millbrook Police Department, known for her methodical approach to investigations and her ability to remain calm in unusual situations. However, even she seemed perplexed by what she encountered at the library. "Let me understand this correctly," Detective Chen said to Margaret as they stood near the reference desk. "You found 15 people inside a locked building, all claiming to have lost 3 days of memory, none of whom can explain how they got here." "That's correct," Margaret confirmed. "And there's no sign of forced entry. All the doors were still locked when I arrived. The security system wasn't triggered, and nothing appears to have been stolen or damaged." The paramedics conducted preliminary medical examinations of all 15 patrons. Their findings were consistent but troubling. All showed signs of mild dehydration and fatigue, as if they hadn't eaten or slept properly in several days. More concerning were the small puncture marks that medical personnel discovered on each person's arm, consistent with recent IV insertion. "Someone has been giving these people intravenous medication," explained EMT Robert Torres to Detective Chen. "The injection sites are professional quality, not the work of an amateur. This suggests medical training." Toxicology screenings were ordered immediately, and the results would later reveal traces of sedatives and memory-affecting drugs in all 15 victims' bloodstreams. The medications were sophisticated, a cocktail of benzodiazepines and experimental compounds that could induce temporary amnesia while keeping subjects conscious and responsive to basic commands. As the investigation expanded, Detective Chen discovered that the 15 people had indeed all visited the library on Friday evening, October 10th. Security cameras from businesses along Library Avenue confirmed that each of them had entered the building between 6 and 8 p.m., shortly before the library's closing time. However, the library's internal security system told a different story. The cameras inside the building showed the patrons entering, selecting books, and sitting down to read. But at exactly 8:47 p.m., all the cameras went dark simultaneously, as if someone had shut down the entire system from a central location. The cameras remained offline until Monday morning at 7:30 a.m., when they mysteriously reactivated on their own. The 18 hours of missing footage represented a crucial gap in understanding what had happened to the 15 patrons during their lost weekend. Dr. Rodriguez, despite being one of the victims, proved invaluable to the investigation. Her professional expertise in psychology helped her analyze her own condition and that of the other affected individuals. "We're dealing with chemically induced retrograde amnesia," she explained to Detective Chen during her formal interview. "The drugs found in our systems are consistent with experimental compounds used in memory research. Someone with advanced pharmaceutical knowledge deliberately erased our memories of the past 3 days. But why?" That question haunted Detective Chen as she delved deeper into the case. Background checks on all 15 victims revealed no obvious connections beyond their presence at the library that Friday evening. They came from different neighborhoods, worked in various professions, and ranged in age from 22 to 73. Some were regular library patrons, others visited only occasionally. The investigation expanded to include every staff member who had access to the library, past and present. Margaret Foster was thoroughly vetted and cleared of suspicion. Her shock and confusion at discovering the patrons were clearly genuine. The part-time evening librarian, Thomas Chen, no relation to Detective Chen, had been out of town visiting family in Boston the entire weekend, with airline records and witnesses confirming his alibi. However, the investigation revealed something troubling about the library's history. Dr. Harold Morrison, the head librarian before Margaret, had been quietly dismissed in 1995 under mysterious circumstances. The official records were vague, citing inappropriate conduct and violations of professional ethics, but former employees whispered about strange experiments Dr. Morrison had conducted in the library's basement. "Harold was brilliant but unstable," explained retired librarian Dorothy Walsh during an interview with Detective Chen. "He had a PhD in neuroscience before he became a librarian, and he was obsessed with memory and learning. He kept talking about using the library as a laboratory for understanding human cognition, whatever that meant." The basement of Millbrook Public Library had been sealed off since Dr. Morrison's departure, officially due to structural concerns and safety violations. When Detective Chen obtained a warrant to examine the basement, she discovered that it had been converted into something resembling a research facility rather than a simple storage area. The basement contained sophisticated equipment that seemed out of place in a public library. Computers with specialized software for psychological testing, monitoring devices typically found in medical facilities, and what appeared to be a small pharmaceutical preparation area. However, the space had been thoroughly cleaned, and forensic analysis revealed no immediate evidence connecting it to the recent incident. Dr. Morrison himself proved difficult to locate. After his dismissal from the library, he had apparently left Millbrook and moved frequently, leaving no forwarding addresses. Detective Chen issued a nationwide alert for his whereabouts, but the trail had gone cold years earlier. As weeks passed without significant progress, the case began to fade from public attention. The 15 victims underwent extensive medical and psychological evaluations, but the memory loss appeared to be permanent. They could recall their lives up until that Friday evening at the library, but the subsequent 72 hours remained a complete blank. Dr. Rodriguez continued to be involved in the investigation, both as a victim and as a professional consultant. She worked with Detective Chen to develop theories about what might have happened during the missing weekend. Based on the physical evidence and our condition when we were found, Dr. Rodriguez explained, "I believe we were kept in the library the entire time, possibly sedated and monitored. The books we were reading when found weren't random, they were specifically chosen to test cognitive function and memory retention." This theory suggested that the 15 patrons had been unwilling subjects in some kind of psychological experiment. The puncture marks indicated regular medical monitoring, while the memory-affecting drugs ensured they would have no recollection of their participation. The case remained unsolved, but not forgotten. Detective Chen continued to investigate whenever new leads emerged, and the 15 victims formed an informal support group, meeting monthly to discuss their shared experience and any recovered memories. Dr. Rodriguez became particularly dedicated to solving the mystery. She used her academic resources to research experimental memory drugs and psychological manipulation techniques, hoping to find clues that might lead to their mysterious captor. Years passed. The case file grew thick with reports, theories, and dead-end investigations. The 15 victims gradually resumed their normal lives, though all reported lingering anxiety about the 3 missing days and a general uneasiness when visiting libraries or other public buildings. In 2015, 7 years after the incident, Dr. Rodriguez published a paper in the Journal of Applied Psychology titled Collective Memory Loss, a case study in chemically induced amnesia. While the paper maintained the anonymity of the victims and the location, it brought renewed academic attention to the case and generated several leads from researchers studying similar phenomena. Then, in March 2020, 12 years after the original incident, everything changed. The COVID-19 pandemic had forced the temporary closure of many public buildings, including Millbrook Public Library. When the building was finally able to reopen, city officials decided to use the opportunity to conduct long-overdue renovations, including updates to the basement area that had been sealed since Dr. Morrison's departure. Construction worker Jake Morrison, no relation to the former librarian, was tasked with demolishing old walls in the basement to make way for modern climate control systems. As he swung his sledgehammer against what appeared to be a standard interior wall, the plaster crumbled away to reveal something unexpected. Behind the false wall was a hidden room, approximately 15 feet by 20 feet, that had been carefully concealed for decades. The space was accessed through a cleverly disguised door that had been painted and textured to blend seamlessly with the surrounding wall. Jake's flashlight beam revealed a disturbing scene. The hidden room contained 15 hospital-style beds arranged in neat rows, each equipped with IV stands, monitoring equipment, and leather restraints for securing patients. Along one wall stood a sophisticated pharmaceutical preparation station with drug storage cabinets, mixing equipment, and detailed charts tracking various chemical compounds. But perhaps most disturbing were the detailed records found in filing cabinets throughout the room. Hundreds of folders contained documentation of experiments conducted on unwilling subjects over a period of nearly 20 years. The files revealed that Dr. Harold Morrison had been using the library as a cover for illegal psychological and pharmaceutical research since the mid-1970s. The folders were meticulously organized by date and included detailed notes about drug combinations, memory suppression techniques, and the effects of various treatments on cognitive function. One section of files was labeled Project Library, October 2008, and contained complete documentation of the 3-day experiment conducted on the 15 victims. According to Dr. Morrison's notes, the experiment had been designed to test the effectiveness of new memory-suppressing drugs combined with subliminal learning techniques. The 15 subjects had been kept sedated and monitored while being exposed to various stimuli designed to test whether information could be implanted in their minds while their conscious memories were being suppressed. The records revealed that Dr. Morrison had been conducting similar experiments for decades, using library patrons as unwilling test subjects. Earlier experiments had been smaller in scale and shorter in duration, which explained why they had never been discovered or reported. Detective Chen, now a captain in the Millbrook Police Department, was immediately notified of the discovery. The hidden room was secured as a crime scene, and a new investigation was launched based on the evidence found in Dr. Morrison's files. The manhunt for Dr. Morrison intensified, with federal authorities joining the search. The scope of his crimes was far greater than anyone had imagined. The files indicated he had experimented on hundreds of people over the course of his career, always covering his tracks by ensuring his victims had no memory of their participation. 3 months after the discovery of the hidden room, Dr. Morrison was finally located. At age 78, he was living under an assumed name in a remote cabin in northern Maine, where he had been continuing his research using homeless individuals who were unlikely to be missed if they disappeared. When arrested, Dr. Morrison showed no remorse for his crimes. In police interviews, he described his work as groundbreaking research into human consciousness and memory manipulation. He claimed that his experiments would eventually lead to breakthroughs in treating PTSD, addiction, and other psychological disorders. Those people lost 3 days. He told investigators, "But my research could help millions overcome traumatic memories and psychological suffering. The sacrifice of a few for the benefit of many is not only justified, it's necessary." Dr. Morrison was charged with hundreds of counts of assault, battery, unlawful imprisonment, illegal human experimentation, and numerous other crimes. The evidence found in his hidden laboratory was overwhelming, and he was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the 15 victims of the 2008 incident, the discovery brought a mixture of relief and horror. They finally had answers about their missing 3 days, but those answers revealed the extent of their violation in ways they had never imagined. Dr. Rodriguez, now in her 60s, attended every day of Dr. Morrison's trial. When given the opportunity to address the court during sentencing, she spoke for all the victims. "You didn't just steal our memories," she told Dr. Morrison. "You stole our sense of safety, our trust in the world around us, and our faith that such violations couldn't happen in our own community. Your so-called research was nothing more than the actions of a predator who used science as an excuse for unforgivable crimes." The Millbrook Public Library underwent extensive renovations after the discovery, with the basement being completely rebuilt and converted into a community meeting space. A memorial plaque was installed near the entrance, acknowledging the victims of Dr. Morrison's experiments and serving as a reminder that such violations of human dignity must never be allowed to happen again. The 15 victims received a settlement from the city of Millbrook, which had failed to properly investigate Dr. Morrison's activities despite numerous subtle warning signs over the years. Many used the money to fund research into ethical psychological treatment and victims' rights advocacy. Dr. Rodriguez continued her academic career but shifted her focus to studying the psychological impact of memory manipulation and advocating for stricter oversight of research involving human subjects. She published several more papers about her experience, always emphasizing the importance of informed consent and ethical guidelines in psychological research. The case of the vanished library patrons became a landmark in discussions about research ethics and the protection of human subjects. Medical schools and psychology programs began using it as a case study in their ethics courses, ensuring that future researchers would understand the devastating consequences of treating human beings as mere experimental subjects. Jake Morrison, the construction worker who discovered the hidden room, was commended by the city for his role in finally bringing Dr. Morrison to justice. He continued working in construction but became an advocate for thorough building inspections, particularly in older public buildings where similar hidden spaces might exist. Margaret Foster, the librarian who had discovered the 15 confused patrons 12 years earlier, retired shortly after Dr. Morrison's conviction. She had served the Millbrook community faithfully for over 3 decades, but the revelation that such horrific crimes had been committed in her beloved library left her unable to continue working in the building. "I keep thinking about all the people who came to the library over the years," she said in an interview after her retirement. "How many of them were victims? How many times did I unknowingly direct someone toward a predator? The guilt is overwhelming, even though I know there was no way I could have known what was happening." The Millbrook Public Library eventually reopened with enhanced security measures and a completely new staff. A victim advocate program was established to help community members who suspected they might have been affected by Dr. Morrison's experiments, but had never connected their experiences to his crimes. Over the following years, dozens of people came forward with stories of memory gaps, unexplained medical symptoms, and strange experiences at the library during Dr. Morrison's tenure. While not all of these cases could be definitively linked to his experiments, the sheer number of reports suggested that his crimes had affected far more people than the documented cases in his files. The case also led to significant changes in how libraries and other public institutions conduct background checks on employees. Dr. Morrison's ability to hide his true nature and continue his crimes for decades highlighted the need for more thorough vetting of individuals who work in positions of trust within the community. Today, the story of the vanished library patrons serves as a chilling reminder that predators can hide behind the most trusted institutions in our society. Libraries, schools, hospitals, and other places we consider safe havens can become hunting grounds for those who exploit our trust and vulnerability. The 15 victims, now in their 50s, 60s, and 80s, maintain contact with each other and continue to advocate for victims' rights. Their shared experience of violation and recovery has created bonds that transcend the trauma they endured together. Dr. Rodriguez, in her final academic paper before retirement, wrote, "We may never recover those 3 lost days, but we have recovered something more valuable: our voices, our agency, and our determination to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. In speaking out about our experience, we transform ourselves from victims into advocates, and that transformation is more powerful than any drug designed to steal our memories." The case remains a sobering example of how scientific knowledge can be perverted into an instrument of harm, and how the pursuit of knowledge without ethical constraints can lead to the most heinous violations of human dignity. It stands as a testament to the importance of vigilance, ethical oversight, and the courage to speak truth to power, even when that power hides behind the respected facade of academic research. Most importantly, it demonstrates that while memory can be stolen, the human spirit's capacity for resilience and justice cannot be erased by any drug or manipulation. The 15 people who sat in silent confusion at those library tables on that October morning in 2008 ultimately found their voices and used them to ensure that their suffering served a greater purpose, protecting others from similar fates.